Hey everyone, and welcome to this deep dive into making smarter decisions.
Yes, welcome.
You're here because you want to make better choices, right?
That's right.
Especially when things feel uncertain, and, well, I think we all feel that a lot of the time.
Yeah, for sure.
So to help us out today, we've got some pretty cool sources to dig into.
Cool sources. What do we have?
We're going to be diving into Annie Duke's Thinking in Bets.
Oh, a classic.
It really is, and we'll be looking at some real-life examples, too,
Love that.
because, let's be honest, sometimes those theories and concepts,
Yeah,
they need a little bit of grounding in the real world to really make sense.
absolutely.
And we'll also be touching on some psychology research as well.
Ooh, I love a good research study.
I do too. So get ready to rethink how you approach those tough choices.
I'm excited.
Okay, so let's jump right in.
Let's do it.
The core idea of thinking in bets is that every decision we make
Mm-hmm.
is essentially a bet on the future.
Okay.
We're always wagering on different outcomes.
I like that we're always wagering.
We are, but we often don't even realize it.
It's true.
It's like we're playing this giant game, but we haven't quite figured out the rules yet.
Yeah, and one of the big things we need to shift is how we judge those decisions.
Okay.
So often we look at the outcome and that's it.
If it worked out, great decision.
Yeah, right.
If it didn't,
Terrible decision.
exactly. And Duke calls this resulting.
Resulting.
And she says it can lead us to some pretty bad conclusions
Why is that?
because a decision can have a bad outcome, even if it was a good decision.
Can you give me an example?
Think about flipping a coin.
Okay.
You could get 5 heads in a row, even though the odds are 50-50.
Yeah, that's true. It's still random.
Exactly.
So just because something doesn't go our way
Right.
doesn't mean the decision itself was bad.
Exactly. Like, remember that infamous call by Pete Carroll in the 2015
Oh,
Super
Pete?
Bowl?
Oh, yeah, the Seattle Seahawks one?
Yeah, they were 1 yard away from winning.
I remember thinking they were going to run the ball.
Everyone did. That Carroll called a pass play.
Yeah.
Patriots intercepted it.
Oh, it was heartbreaking.
It was, and everyone went nuts calling it the worst play call ever.
Yeah, can you really blame them, though?
I mean, I get it, but the thing is, there were actually solid reasons behind his choice.
Really?
Statistically speaking, passing in that situation actually had a slightly higher chance of success.
Oh, wow. So it wasn't just a crazy, impulsive decision.
You know, it was a calculated risk.
But one that backfired spectacularly.
It did, but it just goes to show that you can't judge decisions solely on the results.
It's about the process, the information you had at the time.
Exactly. You have to look at the logic.
I'm starting to see why this resulting thing can be so dangerous.
It really can, and another thing to keep in mind is that we're not just betting against another person,
Okay.
but against all the different futures we could have chosen.
What do you mean?
Each decision closes off some paths
Yeah.
while opening up others. It's like choosing one door, and then all the other doors disappear.
So we're always making trade-offs, even if we don't realize it.
Exactly. And sometimes those trade-offs come with unexpected consequences.
So main example.
Remember that story about the poker player John Hennigan?
No, tell me about it.
He made a bet that he could live in Des Moines, Iowa for a year.
Des Moines, Iowa, really?
Yeah, and it wasn't just about being there physically.
What do you mean?
He was wagering on his quality of life. He thought he could be happy there.
Interesting.
But it turned out he really didn't enjoy it as much as he expected.
Oh no, so what happened?
He ended up paying to get out of the bet.
So he lost the bet.
Yeah. But what's interesting is that it highlights these hidden bets we all make.
What do you mean?
We're betting on these uncertain future versions of ourselves,
Okay.
hoping those future selves will be content with the choices we're making today.
I've never thought about it that way, but it makes sense.
Right, like when you choose a career path,
Yeah.
you're betting that future you will be fulfilled by that choice.
And sometimes it works out.
And sometimes we end up paying to get out of the bet.
Okay, so we've established that decisions are bets
We have.
and that we're not always great at judging them.
That's right.
So how do we get better at making those bets, especially when we're faced with so much uncertainty?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is. And I think a good place to start is by understanding how our brains are wired.
Okay.
We crave certainty. We crave comfort.
Right, it feels safer to stick with what we know.
Exactly. But the problem is the world is anything but certain.
That's for sure.
So this craving for certainty leads us to all sorts of biases.
Like what?
Well, one of the big ones is motivated reasoning.
Motivated reasoning.
Yeah, it's basically where we seek out information that confirms what we already believe.
Oh, so even if what we believe is wrong.
Exactly. We filter out anything that challenges our worldview.
So we end up stuck in these echo chambers.
It's like we're wearing blinders.
And that's where critical thinking comes in, right?
Absolutely. We need to be able to question our assumptions and be open to different viewpoints.
It's about challenging our own biases.
Exactly. And, this isn't just something that novices do.
Oh, really?
Even experts can fall into this
I
trap.
guess we're all human after all.
We are, and there's a fascinating study called They Saw a Game.
Okay, I like where this is going.
Researchers showed students from rival schools
Uh-huh.
the same footage of a brutal football game.
Ooh, that's going to be interesting.
And you know what? The
Oh.
students from each school perceive the game completely differently.
You're kidding.
Nope. Their pre-existing loyalties actually biased how they saw the same objective facts.
So even when we're looking at the same evidence,
Yeah.
our biases can twist our perceptions.
It's like our brains are filling in the blanks based on what we want to see.
That's wild.
It is, and it all ties into this concept of two different thinking systems.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
So this comes from Daniel Kahneman's work,
Oh, the Nobel Prize winner?
the one and only, and he calls these systems System 1 and System 2. System 1 is our fast, intuitive, emotional response.
It's like a gut feeling.
Exactly. And System 2 is slower, more deliberative, analytical.
So it's like the thoughtful side of our brain.
Right. The problem is we can't just rely on willpower to switch from System 1 to System 2.
So we can't just tell ourselves to think more rationally and magically make it happen.
Nope. Our biases often operate on a subconscious level.
So even when we try to be objective, our emotions can still sneak in and influence our decisions.
And it makes it so much harder to learn from our experiences and actually improve our decision-making.
Right, because if we're always blaming external factors or bad luck,
Yeah.
we never really take responsibility for our own choices.
And that brings us to another important concept, self-serving bias.
Okay, I've heard of that one. What's it all about again?
It's that tendency we have to take credit when things go well.
Attributing it to our amazing skill and brilliance.
Of course, but then when things go wrong.
It's bad luck or someone else's fault.
Exactly, it's never our fault.
We're all perfect in our own minds.
Right, and this bias can really get in the way of learning.
Because if we can't acknowledge our mistakes, we can't learn from them.
It's like trying to get better at playing a sport without ever watching a replay of your game.
You'd never know what to improve.
And Annie Duke actually shares a story from her early poker career that illustrates this perfectly.
Well, know me about it.
So she was a really skilled player,
Uh-huh.
but whenever she saw other players winning,
Yeah.
she'd just dismiss it as luck.
Because they couldn't possibly be as good as her.
Exactly. She couldn't fathom that they might have skills she could learn from.
So her ego was preventing her from growing as a player.
It was, and it took her a while to realize that.
It's so relatable, though, isn't it?
It is. We all want to believe we're brilliant,
Yeah.
but sometimes chance plays a bigger role than we'd like to admit.
And recognizing that, acknowledging that uncertainty
Right.
is actually key to making better decisions.
We need to move away from thinking in absolutes.
Like right and wrong.
Exactly, and embrace this idea of degrees of confidence.
Instead of saying, I'm sure,
Yeah.
we should be saying, I'm 70% confident.
Right, or there's a 30% chance of this happening.
It's a much more nuanced approach.
It is. It's about embracing the gray areas.
And it seems like a more realistic way to navigate a world that's constantly changing.
Absolutely.
It's like the scientific method,
Oh, yeah.
Scientists are always testing hypotheses, revising their understanding based on new data.
They embrace uncertainty as part of the process.
Exactly. They know they don't have all the answers.
And that's a good thing.
It is. It keeps them open to new information and different viewpoints.
Which ultimately leads to better decisions.
Okay, so we've talked about acknowledging uncertainty, recognizing our biases.
Uh-huh.
But are there any practical techniques we can use to actually make those tough decisions?
There are, and one of the most interesting ideas Duke talks about is that of a decision pod.
A decision pod, what's that?
It's basically like having a group of trusted advisors who are dedicated to giving you honest feedback
Uh-huh.
and helping you improve your decision-making.
So it's not just your typical group of friends
No,
where everyone agrees with each other to avoid conflict.
not at all. It's about having a shared understanding that the goal
Yeah.
is truth-seeking and accuracy.
Even if it means challenging each other's beliefs.
Absolutely. Or acknowledging uncomfortable truths.
It sounds like it requires a high level of trust
It does.
and a willingness to be vulnerable.
For sure.
It makes me think of that awkward David Letterman interview with Lauren Conrad,
Oh, yeah.
where he basically implied she was the problem.
Yeah, it did not go well.
It didn't, because there wasn't that shared understanding.
Right. There was no agreement on the purpose of the conversation.
And that's key, isn't it?
It is. You need to establish that shared understanding and agreement
Yeah.
before you can engage in these kinds of truth-seeking conversations.
So a decision pod is about creating a safe space
Yes.
for open and honest dialogue, where the focus is on finding the best solutions, not
Yeah.
on protecting egos.
That's it.
That's really interesting.
And to make a decision pod really work, you need diversity of thought.
That makes sense.
The more perspectives you have, the better you can challenge your own assumptions, you know?
Yeah, like you can spot those blind spots you might not even realize you have.
Exactly. It's kind of like having your own personal red team.
Red team, what's that?
You know those groups the CIA and military use
Oh, yeah?
to poke holes in their plans and strategies?
I can see how that would be super valuable.
It is, especially when you're dealing with complex decisions.
Getting insights from people who might not agree with you.
Yeah, it forces you to think outside the box.
And speaking of frameworks,
Oh, yes.
there's this sociologist, Robert K. Merton.
I've heard of him.
He came up with this set of norms he called HUDOS.
HUDOS. It's a good acronym.
It is, and it's all about creating a productive decision-making environment.
Okay. All ears, break it down for me.
So CO stands for communism, universalism, disinterestedness, and organized skepticism.
Okay, wow. That's quite a mouthful.
It is, but let's unpack it.
Okay.
Now, the communism part might sound a little strange.
Yeah, especially these days.
Right? But in this context, it just means that information is shared openly within the group.
So no one's hoarding knowledge or keeping secrets.
Exactly. It's about transparency and making sure everyone has access to the same information.
Okay, that makes sense.
Then we have universalism,
Universalism.
and that's about applying objective standards to claims and evidence.
So it doesn't matter who's presenting the information,
Right. It's about judging the idea on its merits,
not on whether we like the person who said it.
or whether it aligns with our existing beliefs.
So we're focusing on the facts, not on personal biases or agendas.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm liking this framework so far.
Right. Then there's disinterestedness.
Disinterestedness.
And this one's all about making sure our judgments aren't clouded by personal gain or conflicts of interest,
So it's about seeking the truth, even if it's uncomfortable.
even if it doesn't benefit you directly.
It's putting the group's goal ahead of your own individual interests.
Exactly.
Okay, I can see how that would be tough, but important.
It is. And then finally, we have organized skepticism.
Organized skepticism, so like healthy debate.
Exactly. It's about encouraging dissent,
Uh-huh.
questioning each other's thinking.
But in a respectful way, right?
Yes. Always respectful and productive.
So it's not about tearing each other down.
No, it's about sharpening each other's ideas.
I like that, sharpening each other's ideas.
It's about making the ideas better through challenge and debate.
Okay, so basically CUDOS is like a blueprint for creating this decision-making environment.
That prioritizes honesty, objectivity, and rigorous analysis.
It's about shifting the focus from winning arguments
Right.
to finding the best solutions.
Exactly.
I love it.
So we've talked about acknowledging uncertainty, surrounding ourselves with diverse perspectives.
Uh-huh.
But are there any tools we can use to improve our individual decision-making skills?
There are. And one technique Duke highlights is mental time travel.
Mental time travel, that sounds trippy.
It is it's about bringing our past and future selves into the present moment.
Okay, give me an example.
Sure, imagine you're debating whether to splurge on a vacation
Uh-huh.
or save for retirement,
Classic dilemma.
right? Mental time travel would involve asking yourself,
Yeah.
how will I feel about this decision 5 years from now,
Okay.
10 years from now?
So it's about considering the long-term consequences
Exactly.
of our choices.
Right, and there are even apps that use age progression software
Really?
to show you what you might look like decades into the future.
Wow.
Some financial companies use this to help people visualize their future selves
Oh, that's interesting.
during retirement planning.
I can see how that would be a powerful motivator to save more.
It can be, but even without fancy technology,
Yeah.
there's a simple question you can use.
Okay, tell me.
It's the 10-10-10 question.
The 10-10-10 question. What is it?
It's simple. You ask yourself how you'll feel about a decision in 10 minutes,
Okay.
10 months, and 10 years.
Oh, I like that.
It helps you consider both the immediate and long-term implications.
That's a great way to put things in perspective.
It is. We often get so caught up in the moment
Yeah.
that we forget to consider how our choices will impact our future selves. It's about stepping outside of our immediate desires
Yeah.
and viewing our lives from a wider perspective.
It's like that analogy of a flat tire.
Oh, yeah.
In the moment, it feels disastrous.
Right.
But looking back, it's probably just a funny story.
Exactly. Mental time travel helps us zoom out
Uh-huh.
and remember that most things aren't as catastrophic as they seem in the heat of the moment.
It's like viewing happiness as a long-term stock holding.
That's a great way to think about it.
Instead of getting fixated on the daily fluctuations of the market.
It's about focusing on the long game,
Right.
not letting short-term setbacks derail us from our overall goals.
And speaking of setbacks,
Oh, yes.
Duke talks about this concept called tilt.
Tilts, I've heard that term before.
It's a poker term.
Oh, right.
That emotional state when recent outcomes, especially negative ones,
Yeah.
cloud our judgment.
It's like our rational mind goes on vacation,
Exactly.
and we're more prone to making impulsive decisions.
It happens in all areas of life, not just poker.
Oh, for sure.
Think about that time you had a bad day at work
Oh.
and snapped at your loved ones.
Oh, yeah, I've definitely been there.
That's tilt in action.
Our emotions hijack our thinking.
And we react in ways we later regret.
So how do we avoid falling into that tilt trap?
It's easier said than done, right?
It is, but that's where Ulysses contracts come in.
Ulysses contract.
Yeah, these are pre-commitment strategies
Yeah.
we put in place to prevent ourselves from making those rash decisions.
When we're on tilt.
Exactly like Ulysses tying himself to the mast of his ship.
Oh, right. To resist the siren's call.
Exactly. He knew he couldn't resist their temptation.
Yeah.
Left to his own devices.
So he bound himself to a course of action that would keep him safe.
It's brilliant.
It is, and we can
Yeah.
apply that same principle to our own lives.
So it's about anticipating those situations
Yeah.
where we might be vulnerable to making poor choices and putting safeguards in place ahead of time.
Okay, so give me an example.
Sure, if you know you tend to overspend when you're stressed,
Okay.
you might create a budget
Uh-huh.
or give a trusted friend access to your accounts during those times.
To prevent you from going on a shopping spree.
Exactly. Or like using a ride-sharing service when you go out drinking.
Oh, that's a good one.
It removes the decision of whether or not to drive.
You've already made the responsible choice in advance.
Exactly. Those are great examples of Ulysses contracts.
It's about protecting ourselves from our own irrational tendencies.
It is, and it can be applied to any area of life where you want to make better choices.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
Acknowledging uncertainty, recognizing biases, building decision pods, using mental time travel Ulysses contracts.
It's a lot to take in.
It is. But what else can we do to up our decision-making game?
Well, one crucial aspect is planning for the future.
Okay.
That's where scenario planning comes in.
Scenario planning, what's that all about?
It's about mapping out the range of possible futures.
Both good and bad.
Exactly. You want to consider all the potential outcomes.
Not just the ones we're hoping for.
Right. It's kind of like that saying, hope for the best, prepare for the worst.
I like that.
Scenario planning helps us identify potential risks and opportunities.
Okay.
So we can create better contingency plans.
Duke actually gives an example of a nonprofit that was struggling with its grant application process.
Oh, really?
They were prioritizing applications based on the amount of money requested.
Oh, so like going for the big wins.
Yeah, but it was leading to a lot of wasted time and resources.
Because they weren't considering the likelihood of actually winning those grants.
Exactly. They were essentially playing a lottery.
Makes sense.
So Duke helped them incorporate scenario planning.
Okay. How did that work?
They started estimating the probability of winning each grant
Okay.
and then prioritizing applications based on expected value,
Expected value.
which takes into account both the potential reward
Yeah.
and the likelihood of achieving it.
So it's a more balanced approach.
It is. It's about making smart bets based on data and analysis.
Not just wishful thinking.
And even if you're not dealing with grant applications,
Uh-huh.
this concept can be applied to any decision involving uncertainty.
Absolutely. Like choosing a career path or
Or investing in a new business.
even deciding where to go on vacation.
It's about thinking through the different possibilities and making choices that maximize our chances of success.
Duke actually uses scenario planning to break down Pete Carroll's Super Bowl call.
Oh, that's interesting.
She analyzes the potential outcomes of both running and passing,
Okay.
showing how considering multiple scenarios can inform even the most complex decisions.
So even when there's no guaranteed right answer, scenario planning can help us weigh the options and make choices that align with our goals.
Precisely, and scenario planning also helps us move beyond just focusing on the positive outcomes.
Okay.
It encourages us to consider the potential downsides.
Which brings us to premortems.
Premortems, what are those?
It's basically imagining that your project or plan has already failed
Okay.
and then working backward to figure out why.
So it's like a what could go wrong exercise.
Exactly. But you do it before you even start.
That's interesting.
It helps you see the negative space in your plans.
The blind spots that our natural optimism might be hiding.
Right, because we tend to focus on all the reasons why something will work.
Yeah, and ignore the potential pitfalls.
And a premortem forces us to confront those potential problems head on.
I like that.
Especially for those big decisions where the stakes are high.
It's a powerful way to identify and mitigate risks.
Before they become major problems.
So we've got scenario planning to map out the possibilities, premortems to identify potential pitfalls.
It's like we're building a toolkit for navigating uncertainty.
And another important tool to add to that toolkit is understanding base rates.
Base rates? What are those?
It's basically the statistical probabilities of certain events occurring.
So like how often something actually happens?
Exactly, and it's about recognizing that some outcomes are just inherently more likely than others.
Okay, give me an example.
Sure, the base rate of winning the lottery is incredibly small.
Yeah, that's true.
And most new businesses fail within the first few years.
So it's about grounding our decisions in reality.
Even when that reality might not be as exciting as our dreams.
Right. It's about balancing our hopes and ambitions with a clear-eyed assessment of the odds.
It's about making informed bets.
Not just blindly chasing after improbable outcomes.
Exactly.
It seems like a theme is emerging here.
What's that?
Decisions as bets.
Uh-huh.
Recognizing uncertainty.
Yeah.
Considering multiple perspectives.
Right.
Planning for a range of possibilities.
It's all about becoming more strategic and thoughtful.
And how we approach choices both big and small.
And it all ties back to this idea of thinking in bets.
Right.
Which is really about viewing decisions through this new lens.
A lens that acknowledges uncertainty.
Exactly.
Embraces feedback.
And focuses on improving our odds of success over time.
I like that.
It's a powerful shift in perspective.
Okay, so we've talked about gathering information, planning for different scenarios, understanding base rates. But what about our internal compass?
Our intuition.
Yeah, those gut feelings that can sometimes lead us astray.
Duke acknowledges that intuition can be a powerful tool,
Okay.
but it's important to understand its limitations.
What do you mean?
Our gut feelings are often influenced by biases and past experiences that might not be relevant to the current situation.
It's like relying on an outdated map to navigate a new city.
Exactly. That's why it's crucial to combine intuition with data, analysis, and critical thinking.
It's about balancing our gut feelings with a healthy dose of rational thought and objective evidence.
Precisely. It's like having a conversation between our heart and our head.
Weighing both perspectives before making a choice.
I like that.
So we've got external information, internal intuition, all these tools and frameworks for making better decisions.
But at the end of the day, doesn't it all come down to having clear goals?
That's a great point.
What are we actually trying to achieve?
It's amazing how often we make choices without really knowing what we want.
It's like setting off on a journey without a destination in mind.
Exactly. And Duke suggests that our goals should be specific.
Okay.
And adaptable.
Adaptable, why adaptable?
Because life is constantly changing.
Yeah, that's true.
Our goals should evolve along with it.
So it's about being willing to adjust course as needed.
Right. Embracing new opportunities. Letting go of goals that no longer serve us.
It's about being flexible and responsive to life's twists and turns.
But how do we avoid setting goals that are too vague?
Or overwhelming.
Yeah.
Duke uses this metaphor of bright lines.
Bright lines.
Our goals should be clear, well-defined, easily visible, like those lines on a highway that guide us toward our destination.
I love that visual.
It's a great way to think about it.
So instead of saying, I want to be successful,
right,
we need to define what success actually looks like for us.
The more specific you can be, the better you can create a roadmap for achieving those goals.
And then it becomes about breaking down those big overarching goals into smaller, more manageable steps.
Exactly. It's about creating a clear action plan.
With milestones along the way.
To help us stay on track and measure our progress.
So it's like having a destination in mind. And then creating a step-by-step guide to get there.
Exactly. And by regularly reviewing and adjusting our goals, we can make sure they stay relevant and inspiring.
Guiding us toward a future that's both fulfilling and aligned with who we are.
I like that.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
But what about those really tough choices where there's no clear right or wrong answer?
Oh, those are the hardest ones.
They are. So how do we navigate those situations?
That's where the concept of expected value comes in.
Expected value. Okay, tell me more.
It's a tool for making decisions under uncertainty.
Right.
And it's all about weighing the potential outcomes of each choice and the probabilities of those outcomes actually happening.
So it's not just about picking the option with the biggest potential payoff,
No.
but also considering how likely each outcome is.
Exactly. Duke uses this analogy of a coin toss.
Okay.
Let's say you're offered a bet where you win $2 if it lands on heads
Uh-huh.
and you lose $1 if it lands on tails.
Okay.
The expected value of that bet is positive.
Because you have a 50% chance of winning $2
Yeah.
and a 50% chance of losing $1.
Right. So on average, you're expected to come out ahead.
Okay. I'm starting to see how this works.
And while most of our real-life decisions aren't as simple as a coin toss,
Yeah.
the same principle applies.
We can use expected value to analyze our choices and identify those options that are more likely to lead to good outcomes.
And in the long run.
It's like having this mathematical compass
I like that.
to guide us through the fog of uncertainty.
And while expected value doesn't guarantee a specific outcome,
Right.
it helps us make choices that are more aligned with our goals.
And increases our chances of success over time.
It's about making smarter bets.
I like that.
It is. It's about becoming more calculated and strategic in our decision-making.
Rather than just going with our gut or hoping for the best.
Exactly. We can use data and logic to make more informed choices.
To make those bets on the future with a little more confidence.
That's the goal.
It feels like we're building this really solid understanding of how to make better decisions, you know?
Yeah, it's all starting to come together.
From uncertainty to biases to goals, even using tools like expected value.
Right, we've covered a lot.
We have. But
Huh.
it's important to remember that this is an ongoing process.
It's not about reaching some level of perfection.
No, it's about continuously learning, refining our skills.
Absolutely, like becoming better decision makers over time.
And a crucial element of that process is feedback.
Oh, feedback. That's so important.
It is. You can't really improve at anything without it.
Whether you're playing a sport or learning a new language or...
Right, or even just trying to be a better person.
You need that outside perspective.
You need someone to point out your blind spots.
Yeah, to help you see things you might be missing.
And to help you course correct.
Exactly. And Duke says feedback isn't just something we receive from others.
Yeah.
It's also something we can actively seek out from the world around us.
So it's about paying attention to the outcomes of our decisions.
Both the good and the bad.
And using those experiences as data points to learn and grow.
It's like viewing each decision as an experiment.
Analyzing the results and then adjusting our approach.
That's a great way to think about it. And Duke says we should approach feedback with curiosity,
Okay.
not judgment.
Instead of seeing it as criticism,
Yeah.
we should see it as valuable information
It's about separating our egos from the process.
and focusing on what we can learn.
And, feedback can come from all sorts of unexpected sources.
Oh, yeah, like what?
A conversation with a friend,
Mhm.
an article you read,
Right.
even a random encounter with a stranger.
It's about being open to learning from anyone and anything.
Recognizing that wisdom can be found in the most unexpected places.
So one of the most powerful forms of feedback is outcome feedback,
Outcome feedback.
which is basically analyzing the results of our decisions
Okay.
and using those results to inform our future choices.
So if a decision leads to a positive outcome, we might try to replicate that approach.
In similar situations,
Exactly. And if a decision leads to a negative outcome,
we try to figure out what went wrong.
right, and adjust our strategy accordingly.
But it's important to remember that we can't just focus on the outcomes.
Right.
We also need to consider the process, the information we had at the time, the role of luck.
We don't want to fall into that trap of resulting...
Judging decisions solely on how they turned out.
Exactly.
Okay, so feedback's essential for learning and improving our decision-making skills.
It is.
But what about communication?
Communication. Oh, that's huge, especially when you're making decisions with other people.
How does that play into the equation?
Well, communication is key for building trust, fostering collaboration,
Right.
making sure everyone's on the same page.
And Duke suggests we approach communication with that same thinking in Bet's mindset.
So acknowledging uncertainty,
Yeah.
inviting different viewpoints.
Framing our communication in terms of possibilities rather than absolutes.
Exactly. Instead of saying, I'm sure this will work,
Yeah.
it's about saying, I'm 70% confident this is the best approach, but I'm open to hearing other ideas.
It's about creating a more open and collaborative environment.
Where everyone feels comfortable sharing their thoughts and contributing to the decision.
And Duke emphasizes using communication, not just to express our own ideas.
But also to gather information and perspectives from others.
So asking questions, listening actively, being genuinely curious about what other people have to say,
It's about recognizing that we don't have all the answers.
and that the best solutions often come from a collective effort.
Exactly. It's about tapping into the wisdom of the group.
Duke talks about creating a truth-seeking culture.
Truth-seeking culture. I like that.
It's about valuing honesty,
Yeah.
objectivity,
Uh-huh.
intellectual humility.
It's about creating a space where people feel safe to express their doubts.
Yeah.
Ask questions, challenge the status quo.
And recognizing that mistakes are inevitable.
But they're also valuable learning opportunities.
It's about shifting our perspective.
Viewing mistakes not as failures, but as data points that can help us improve.
And Duke highlights a really powerful technique for fostering that truth-seeking culture.
What's that?
Leading with assent.
Leading with assent. Okay, I'm not familiar with that one.
It's about finding points of agreement
Okay.
and building from there.
Rather than leading with criticism or contradiction.
Exactly. It's about acknowledging the validity of other perspectives.
Even if we don't fully agree with them.
Right. It's about finding common ground and creating a more collaborative conversation.
So instead of immediately jumping into that I'm right, you're wrong mode,
Yeah.
we're looking for areas where we can connect and build from there.
It's a subtle shift in approach
But it can make a world of difference.
in how we interact with each other and how we make decisions together.
I'm going to have to try that one.
Well, this has been an amazing deep dive.
It really has.
We've covered so much ground.
From uncertainty to biases to scenario planning.
Mental time travel, Ulysses contracts.
Truth-seeking cultures.
That's a lot.
It is, but it's also valuable.
It is. And Annie Duke's Thinking in Bets really offers this transformative approach to decision-making.
It challenges us to think differently about how we approach choices.
To embrace uncertainty, to learn from our experiences.
It's a powerful book.
It is, and I think the key takeaway for me is that we can all become better decision makers.
We can.
It's a skill we can develop over time,
It's about becoming more mindful of our thought processes,
challenging our assumptions,
seeking out diverse perspectives.
embracing the uncertainty of life,
Beautifully said.
and by incorporating these tools and techniques into our lives.
We can make choices that are more aligned with our goals
More likely to lead to those positive outcomes.
and ultimately create a future that's more fulfilling and meaningful.
So before we wrap up,
Yeah.
I want to leave you with a final thought to ponder.
Okay. I'm listening.
How could this idea of thinking in bets be applied to the biggest challenge you're facing right now?
Ooh, that's a good one.
It could be a personal dilemma, a professional decision, or even a societal issue you're passionate about.
By embracing these concepts and strategies,
We can approach these challenges with more clarity, confidence, and wisdom.
I love that.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the fascinating world of decision-making.
It's been a pleasure.
We hope you've gained some valuable insights that you can apply to your own life.
Remember, every choice is a bet.
And by thinking in bets, we can make those bets with more intention, skill, and awareness.